Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone. So in this video we're going to be continuing the read along of the Secret Zoo Traps and Specters, and we're going to be continuing on with chapter 54 today. So just as a quick recap from the last time, we had a pretty intense situation build up from the last time we left off. So there were kind of three situations going on between four scouts. So the first one was that Megan had been pretty much trapped by Charlie Red, and she was trying to find a classroom to get into, and at a moment's leap of faith she took the secret zoo key that Noah usually has on him and put it into a classroom door, and it unlocked it, and she kind of scrambled in there, but only moments later the Sasquatch pretty much pulverized and broke the door, with kind of glass shattering everywhere. So she's literally standing right now just desks away from the Sasquatch that is kind of in the door, so to speak. Then you have Richie, who was trying to hide his scent of fear from the Sasquatch down the aisle, that had kind of not for surely seen him, but maybe had. So what Richie tried to do was hide his scent of fear to confuse the Sasquatch so he couldn't find him as easily by going into his locker and leaving it unlocked. And then the Sasquatch started just literally destroying the outside and contents of all of the lockers, and his strategy was pretty much to destroy all of them until he got to Richie's locker. And then finally, the other scouts, Ella and Noah, were on the playground, and the only thing that was separating them between a Sasquatch was the metal grate between them on the playground of Clarksville Elementary. And then Ella's arm got grabbed by the Sasquatch, and Noah grabbed her other arm and pulled her away. One of the ways that kind of happened was the part of Ella's Halloween costume had kind of allowed her to be kind of freed, so to speak, from the Sasquatch's grasp. So those are the three kind of scenarios that we're kind of dealing with right now. So we're going to jump into chapter 54. Chapter 54, Against the Whiteboard. Megan scanned the room for an escape. The outside wall had several windows, but they were surely kept locked, and Megan had no time to get them open. There were no doors other than the one that she'd entered through. The only way was the way she'd come in, and the Sasquatch was blocking that passage. Having nowhere to go, she backed toward the front of the class. The Sasquatch crept toward her. It growled and snorted and dripped saliva off its bottom lip. When it bumped into one of the desks it had knocked over, it reached down, seized one of its metal legs, and casually hurled it aside. The spinning desk crashed into the ceiling and came down hard on the floor, breaking into several pieces. Megan walked backward past several desks and stopped by the slick whiteboard on the front wall. To her right was Mrs. Sarah's desk. It was littered with books and paperwork and tins filled with assorted junk. A bunch of pens stood on end in a Mickey Mouse coffee mug, and yellow post-it notes clung to everything. A lamp, a book, a box of tissues, a stapler. The Sasquatch cut across the room at an angle. Headed toward Megan, it plowed through the classroom furniture, its beefy arms heaving items everywhere. Chairs struck the walls, their plastic seats exploding into pieces. Desks flew and knocked over tables and shelves. Papers rained down like large confetti. Unable to stay quiet any longer, Megan hollered, "Leave me alone!" The Sasquatch hurled another desk into the air, where it turned end over end, its open compartments spilling crayons and markers and pink erasers. The desk bounced off a filing cabinet and struck a window, leaving a web of cracks. "DeGraff will never win," Megan shouted. "Even if you kill me, it won't do any good." The Sasquatch threw aside the last desk between it and the front of the class and stepped up to Megan, looking bigger than ever. "What are you going to do, huh?" Megan challenged. "Kill a girl?" The monster answered by letting loose a roar so powerful that pain erupted in Megan's ears and the pens in Miss Sarah's Mickey Mouse cup shook. Chapter 55. Along the walls of lockers. The Sasquatch crushed a group of lockers directly across from Richie. Handles and hinges tumbled through the air and clinked on the floor. The monster pulled itself from the crumbled remains and charged towards Richie, who watched from the slit in his locker vent. He shut his eyes and winced as the beast threw forward its weight. A deafening rattle stung his ears, and a second later Richie looked out to see the Sasquatch charging back across the hall, leading with a mound of its muscular shoulder. To Richie's right, the metal wall was now bulging inward. His locker had barely been missed. The Sasquatch continued to zigzag down the school, crushing lockers and dumping their contents onto the floor. When it reached the end of the wing, it turned the knuckle walked back, its head swinging to survey the damage. Most of the lockers had been pulverized, but a few remained intact. The Sasquatch again sniffed the air for Richie's smell. Richie held his breath, his heart beating faster than ever. He realized he was drenched in sweat. If fear had a smell, he stank of it. The Sasquatch abruptly stopped in front of him and aimed its yellow-eyed gaze at his locker. It sniffed the air deeply, then swung its shoulders and knuckle-walked straight at him. Richie's entire body clenched. A stream of sweat dripped off the tip of his nose. The Sasquatch leaned its head toward the locker vent. Richie watched his face come closer and closer. He began to smell its terrible scent, a cross between a wet dog and a wet compost. The beast pulled back its swollen, cracked lips, exposing the full length of its fangs. Then it leaned in so close that Richie could see nothing but the deep yellow of its eyes and the black of its pupils. The Sasquatch was an inch or two away, and all that separated them was a flimsy steel door. The Sasquatch let out a low, rumbling growl. Richie had been spotted. Chapter 56. The Crawl Tube. Noah led Ella through the maze of playground equipment, her red cape fluttering behind her, the Sasquatch charging after them on all fours. He veered right and headed for the school, which was still more than 50 yards away. Through the fog, the brawl began to take shape. Hannah leaping in the air, Sam flying overhead, Cameron heaving his tail. Hulking bodies lay on the ground. Sasquatches. It seemed the Descenders were winning. Noah glanced back again. The Sasquatch was only a few feet behind Ella. There was no way they were going to outrun it. Ella, follow me. What the heck do you think I'm doing? Noah turned and dove into a plastic crawl tube, roughly 15 feet long and 4 across. Each end was mounted on 2 poles which had it several feet in the air. A line of small oval cutouts, about 3 feet apart from one another, acted as windows. Ella dove in after Noah, and the two of them crawled to the middle of the tunnel. The Sasquatch slowed down and began to knuckle walk beside the long piece of equipment, its stench wafting through the holes. Near the middle of the tube, it pressed its face against the plastic and peered inside, its angry yellow eye near filling the cutout. The scouts whimpered and pressed their backs against the far side of the tube. Ella kicked her flashy red boot against the cutout, and Sasquatch grunted and pulled back. It hesitated, seemed to consider something, then knuckle-walked away, its furry muscles quaking as it grew smaller and smaller, and then disappeared altogether in a cloud of dense fog. The scouts, too stunned for words, sat there in silence. After a few seconds, Ella whispered, "Is it gone?" Noah shrugged. The two of them became very quiet and listened. The Sasquatch suddenly appeared on all fours. It was charging straight at them. "Get down," Noah said. The scouts dropped in opposite positions, landing on their stomachs on the curved plastic floor. A second later, the Sasquatch punched its arm through a cutout and clawed at the open space, trying to grab one of the scouts as they squirmed away. Unable to reach them, it tried to pull free and couldn't. Its arm was trapped. It roared and rocked its hulkish body back and forth, slamming against the crawl tube again and again. Noah pointed to the open end of the tube beyond Ella. "Go! Now's our chance!" As they clambered for the exit, the Sasquatch thrust its full weight against the tube, knocking them off balance. The beast rammed the tube harder than ever. The circular walls began to quake. Then all at once, the tube snapped off its posts and dropped several feet to the ground, the Sasquatch's arm finally slipping free. The Sasquatch jumped to the end of the tube in front of Ella and lowered its overturned head into the opening. Its top lip drooped above its gum line, and drool dripped into its own eyes. In the small space of the tube, a growl rumbled like thunder. The Sasquatch grabbed for the scouts, who screamed and crawled out of reach. The monster then pulled back its arm and knuckle-walked to the other end of the tunnel. As its face appeared in the opening, Ella and Noah retreated to their former spot, toward the middle of the tube. The Sasquatch straightened its legs and hammered a fist down on the tunnel roof. The plastic cracked and its blocky knuckles broke through. The beast tipped its head to one side and studied what it had done. "Oh no," Ella said. The Sasquatch again knuckle-walked to the middle of the tube. It backed up about 15 feet, charged forward, and slammed into the plastic wall, which buckled inward as the tube went into a roll. The scouts thrashed, their bodies turning along the revolving curve of the floor. The tunnel wheeled about 15 feet and came to a stop. Noah untangled himself and touched the spot that the Sasquatch had struck. Along the plastic was a web of cracks. "He's going to rip this thing apart," he said, "to get to us." Ella crawled out from under her cape, which had settled on top of her head. "How far is the school?" Noah glanced through one of the cutouts and saw the foggy images of the descenders. 50 yards, Noah said. "Maybe more." "We have to make a run for it," Ella said. As she turned for the exit, Noah seized her shoulder. "Wait! Wait for what?" In response, Noah stood on his knees, gripped the edges of the two cutouts on the opposite side of the Sasquatch, and pulled down. The tunnel wheeled forward about a foot and stopped. "We can move this thing," Noah said. "It'll keep us safe." The Sasquatch struck the tube again, sending it into another roll. Noah and Ella were tossed about until the tube came to a stop, 10 feet away from its previous spot. The scouts got to their knees and once more faced the wall opposite the Sasquatch. They reached over their heads, gripped the edges of the two cutouts, and pulled down while heaving their weight forward. As the tunnel began to turn, they walked their arms along the wall. The tube rolled faster, the scouts crawling along inside it like hamsters in a wheel. Noah peered through a cutout over his shoulder just in time to see the Sasquatch bearing down on them again. "Hold on!" Their heads rocked and they shot forward as the Sasquatch hit. The tube rose slightly off the ground and then bounced as it landed, throwing Noah and Ella off balance. They quickly stabilized themselves and kept crawling along the spinning wall. "Go! Go!" Noah said. As they rolled forward, playground equipment zipped past. A spiral slide, a freestanding rock wall, a swinging gate. Noah peered out through the cutouts and spotted the descenders standing side by side. They were less than 25 yards away now, the defeated Sasquatches lying all around them. The Sasquatch rammed into the tube, which went airborne again. As the tunnel touched down, it took off with more speed than ever. Noah felt the web of fractures beneath his fingers. It was growing, branching in new directions. Ella and Noah were moving in near-perfect unison now. As they closed within 15 yards of the descenders, the Sasquatch delivered another blow to the crawl tube, which split in two and veered off in opposite directions, Ella in one half and Noah in the other. Ella's tube rolled to a halt by Sam, Noah's by Solana. The four teenagers spun to face a Sasquatch, who skidded to a stop in front of them, wood chips piling onto its big feet. With a smirk, Sam said, "Hi there." Hannah sprang into the air and delivered a kick to the monster's chin, dropping it to the ground, where it shuddered once and then lay perfectly still. Solana squatted beside Ella's tube and peered inside. She nodded and stroked her fingertips along the plastic curve. "Inventive. I'll give you that." Ella crawled out and staggered to her feet. Her gold headband was turned sideways, and her lasso of truth was coiled around one of her boots. As she rearranged her wardrobe, she stuck out her tongue at Solana in a way that was only half playful. The crossers turned to the open doors. This wasn't over. Charlie Red had to be stopped. His capture would surely lead the secret society to DeGraff. and Megan and Richie were alone in the school. Sam took off running toward the building, and the group followed. One by one, they passed through the open doorway into the dark and dangerous halls of Clarksville Elementary. And I'll stop the video there, ending chapter 56. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and please take good care of yourselves and be safe. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time, where we'll be continuing our read-along of The Secret Zoo and the continuation of how the Scouts and Descenders tried to get DeGraff and kind of see as Megan and Richie kind of get out of their puzzling predicaments. But as always, guys, thank you so much, and please take good care of yourselves. Bye.